All right, my friends, welcome to another episode of the Build Show Live. That's right, we're in the studio here in Austin, Texas, and we got a great webinar for you today. This is a live webinar. We got a bunch of people live, but you may be watching this later in the recorded. So if you're watching this on the recorded edition, unfortunately, there's no Q&A for you. Sign up for our email newsletter so you can get a hold of these live events and join us live. Let me introduce our guests today. I've got Cole, all the way from Span HQ in San Francisco. I've got a full-size Span panel that's going to be our guest as well. Pretty cool looking, but not very good at the talking portion, so we're going to rely on you, Cole, to talk for it. And then I've got CJ Nelson with CNC Electric. You probably know CJ from the Build Show Network, but he's a true electrician. Master electrician, although in California they call them journeyman electricians, right? Who owns a small shop in the
Northern California, wine country. Okay. We're north of San Francisco, so
there we go.
North Bay.
And I was just actually there yesterday, believe it or not, shooting some videos with CJ about why your kids or you watching might consider a career as an electrician. So stay tuned for that in the future, called Talking Trades. We're talking about Span panels today. We have a demo panel, and this webinar, we're going to go for about an hour, by the way. We're going to leave at least 15, maybe 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. And if you're logging on to Zoom right now, if you're on Zoom, there's a Q&A tab and there's a chat tab. Don't use chat. I don't monitor it. We don't look at it. You're going to go into the bottomless pit. But if you go into the Q&A tab, oh, look at that. There's already two questions on here in Q&A. This is what I'll be monitoring, and we're going to jump into those in the last, let's say, 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of the presentation. With that being said, let's kick it off. My first question for you two, which kind of, I think, leads into the webinar. Actually, let me back up one second. I do want to say that these webinars are generally for pros. I know that we get a lot of homeowners that watch as well. But as the three of us are talking, we're talking to you as a fellow contractor, as a fellow electrician, maybe a fellow engineer who is a little more technical, really wants to know behind the scenes and all the nerdy data about this. And I'm kind of thinking of this webinar as a little bit of a trade show, frankly. Whereas if you popped into the Span booth at the International Builder Show and you were with me and CJ, you're kind of going to be overhearing what we might ask Cole at the IBS booth. I've experienced installing these. CJ has installed them. I actually have two of them out on one of my remodel jobs right now. So we have a bit of a sense of understanding of these, and we're going to try and impart what we understand, but also really dig into Cole's mind on the nerdy details. Cole, I wanted to ask you, give us the 2-minute or maybe 3 or 4-minute elevator pitch. If someone says to you, what is this white electrical panel called a Span panel? How do you explain what this does?
It's my favorite question. In some ways, it's the hardest question I answer every day because, unlike this group, not everyone is familiar with their load center, but I know we've got a more familiar group here. So it's a smart panel, but I'll start with why and then kind of what. Okay. So our homes, our lives really are getting smarter. There's data coming from every which direction. That's exciting. It's doing a lot for us, but it can be overwhelming if it's not intentional, if it's kind of haphazard. So we wanted to create a product that made the energy data coming from your home simpler, more intuitive for homeowners, for builders, for anyone interested in that kind of thing. Which led us to an interesting and maybe obvious realization that what does every home, every building have? Mm-hmm. A load center, right? And that load center is already kind of the center of the nervous system of your home.
That's a great way to put it.
It was an obvious kind of couple of steps from there to say, well, what could we do? How could we evolve this 90, 100-year-old technology into something that's ready for the digital era, the modern era, however you want to put it. So what is it? It's an electrical panel, first and foremost.
A breaker box,
a fuse box, whatever you want to call it. It replaces the traditional electrical panel. So this would mount directly in place of your gunmetal gray fuse box. In addition to providing all of those same functions, busing current throughout the house, providing overcurrent protection, short circuit protection, the span panel does a lot more. Inside of this, and we'll get into a lot more detail, I'm sure, is an extremely powerful, intelligent system for monitoring and control and giving you insight ultimately into what's going on in your home. And in addition to that, in addition to the panel and the hardware, we have an app, a very consumer-friendly app that kind of takes all of the horsepower and the engineering that's gone into creating this product and attempts to simplify it down for even your average user, but also for your energy nerd like myself, to really understand what's going on, why, and maybe what you can do about it.
Yep.
So
I love it. That's a great intro. I'm curious from your point, CJ. You've installed some of these. You're an electrician. How do you explain span if one of your clients, a builder, an architect, a client says, "Hey, I'm interested in these span panels. Can you explain that to me, CJ? Why would I want one, or what does this do?"
I think some of the low-hanging fruit is solar integration. I'm in California, and so we have a lot of strict rules when it comes to sustainable stuff like solar and batteries, and it's constantly changing. But I think I would say solar integration and battery integration is a huge upside and kind of pushes any install that we've done. I think energy monitoring is a huge one, and maybe not for everyone, but a lot of people are interested in what they're using, how could they be more energy efficient. But I think one of the bigger things that I really want to dive into, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, would be infrastructure. We're getting more and more electrical loads. The main one for us is in California is the electric vehicles.
Yeah.
They're going to mandate those, and we're all going to be charging at home. And the limitation of the power that's supplied to most of the homes that we're working on, it's getting harder and harder to upgrade that. And I can only foresee that it's going to get more difficult and more expensive. So I'm really interested in that aspect of that.
I like it. We actually, CJ and I, got a chance to go out to one of my job sites, actually like a mile from here, where I'm doing a whole house remodel for a client. Retrofit job, so not a new construction, but a remodel job. And we put 2 span panels in for that client. CJ, welcome to one of my company's remodel projects.
Check it out. We're in Texas.
We're in Texas, 1970s house. We're doing kind of a partial remodel. As you can see in the garage, we left some of the drywall. But as you walk through the house, a fair amount of new construction going on here. And this is our second span install before.
Okay.
And as you can see, we got 2 span panels going on here. Now, I know you spent some time with Rick Power, my electrician.
Yeah, that was good.
Let's spend a few minutes talking to these guys about why we chose span on this project, and also kind of what separates span from what we could have done on this project. So first off, my understanding is this client actually is the one who initiated the span on this project, right?
Yeah, so it was really good to be able to talk to Rick, who wired this house. And I mean, his point was that the customer asked for it, because that was my first question. Being in California, we're almost forced to use stuff like this for certain reasons in code. And I think here, there's a lot of different changes in the rules.
Yeah.
And this customer wanted it, for himself. He's a technology guy.
Yeah, and my understanding is this client was like, I gotta have this. This is super cool. It has a bunch of benefits for me, and I'm excited about it. One of the things he's particularly excited about, if I understand correctly, is they want to monitor their energy use for the first year of this remodel. And we did quite a few energy upgrades on the house. We're changing out the HVAC system, the water heater. We're going to some really high efficiency equipment. They want to go solar. I think there's even some talk of batteries.
Yeah.
But not right away. They want to see what it looks like for a year and then do that.
So, I mean, you can look at span a couple different ways. Batteries that make sense to do it right away, but it sounds like this customer is going to do them, but future.
Yeah.
And he's really going to sit down for the year or so, he said, while he's using these and monitor his energy uses and really get to know his house, which I think is another huge selling point for using something like this.
Now, let me ask you a question. As the builder who doesn't always understand the electrical layouts, why the 2 panels? I think this, if I understand correctly, this is kind of the new circuits are going in here. Is this other span panel kind of taking the original circuits
Yeah, so
Talk to me about how that works and why you chose 2 panels.
just like any other panel, capacity, right? You have so many circuits. These can fit 32 circuits.
Okay.
So there was already a bunch of stuff existing, plus the new stuff. So it was a capacity issue.
Okay.
So the original one is filling up quick, and we have extra room over there.
And the lights on this one. How about that?
How cool is that? Look at this. Hold
That's
on.
pretty neat.
I mean, have you ever seen a panel with built-in LEDs?
And it kind of comes up.
I mean,
too.
that's just a cool feature to me, but actually really functional too.
That is pretty neat. I like that. And I bet if you were to take this panel off too, what do they call this cover?
The dead front.
The dead front. Then you could actually, as an electrician, see the bus bar, understand what's happening
yeah.
in your wires pretty well. If this was in a dark basement, that'd be really nice to have.
I think this should be standard issue on every panel.
That's really smart. Now talk to me about breakers for Span. Are these proprietary breakers that you have to get from Span? What happens if Span goes out of business in 5 years? Are you stuck with a panel that's now outdated?
It was the first thing that I thought of when I heard of Span a couple years ago. I was like, well, that's going to be fun getting breakers, because it's hard enough to get breakers already.
Yep.
But what Span did is they opened up the opportunity for us to use breakers that other manufacturers already make, really common ones off the shelf. So Square D, all the real popular plug-on fit right in. So that's
pretty cool.
a really cool selling point, that we're not having to chase down proprietary breakers like some of these other smart panels that you see around.
That's pretty neat. So instead of smart breakers, we've got a smart panel.
Yep, so it has a microgrid in between each breaker. So you can actually control the load, you get to monitor their load, and actually after the install, when we commission these panels through the app, you're actually teaching the app what each breaker is. So let's, for example, this breaker 1 could be lights, breaker 3 could be receptacles, 2 and 4 could be the dryer, and you get to see that in your app. And it'll actually break down the analytics of each breaker.
Each individual breaker use.
So you can really pull it up, and the app's only gotten better. It's pretty neat to be able to open that up and
I've
see
had
that
2
data.
different energy monitor systems on my house that were kind of clamp based.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them had to clamp on every circuit, and one of them used some technology to kind of figure out what the circuits were. Honestly, they were a little disappointing.
Well, they call them CTs, and those, that technology just eats up space inside of this panel. So, having the brains built in is a huge selling point.
That's going to be a way leap forward.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. This feels like a newer innovation in an older tech. What do you think as an electrician about these spans and what this brings in terms of technology to our job sites?
For us in California, the energy codes are really strict. So, the battery integration is huge. When you lose power and you're able to monitor or disconnect things that you don't want running when you're on backup power, when you lose grid, that's A. B, like this homeowner using the analytics and actually having metrics for each. Not every homeowner is going to look at that, but like you or I or other guys like this homeowner is totally going to dive into that stuff and change his energy habits, because he's going to actually see that data and be able to kind of maneuver around, peak and off-peak hours when they're charging you more or less. So that's another feature.
I'd be willing to bet, and this may not be in this generation, but in the future, that if you could monitor energy use on a particular device, let's say an electric water heater, heat pump water heater, or a heat pump outside, that if you saw changes in that use over time, you might be able to detect a fault or a problem and potentially replace a piece of equipment or service a piece of equipment before it becomes a problem.
Well, think about it. It's software at that point, and this has built-in brains, so you can get that data. So, that would be a cool feature, and I guarantee we'll see it where if a motor is going out, you're not going to know that with anything else. But, so that could be, again, the possibilities are endless when you're talking software.
That's pretty cool. On a purely aesthetic front, though, I got to mention this glass front. Pretty sick.
It's beautiful.
I don't know this for certain, but I've heard that there's something that kind of cleans up this install too. Do you know about that?
Well, again, flipping through the catalog of what Span offers, they have a lot of cool, innovative stuff that these old panels don't have. So they have a trim ring that comes right out of the box. So like if in this application, a cut-in,
Retrofit.
you'd have to have your drywall guy come in, so it has a trim ring that pops over. I also like that these doors are reversible. You can actually change.
You can flip that.
Yeah.
Like a refrigerator.
It's so
smart.
Awesome. It's really cool. Another extremely important feature that I think is important to touch on is The ability to monitor your power, not just monitor your power, but to be able to throttle back things or turn things off. Like if you're charging an EV inside, and it will know if your dryer is running. So what that's going to open up the possibility of is not like, let's say you have a 100 amp service on your house and you're adding an addition. Most cases, years before this, we'd have to upgrade to a 200 amp panel. Well, we're going to be able to install a span to kind of help us manage our power within what we have, which is really neat too, because you know how that, pulling permits and getting more power is not always feasible on a project.
Yeah, and even though you might have all these circuits, they're not all running at full tilt all the time. So to have a smart device like this that could throttle, that's a really big deal. And then that really speaks to me about batteries and thinking about, if I had a Tesla Powerwall or two in my garage, what an incredible deal that my span panel could go, hey, we don't need to run this, and this right now, but we have to have this and this circuit that are important for my family. Or frankly, I could change that during an emergency and say, actually, let's turn off the fridge in the garage or the freezer for a couple hours so that I can run this.
And that's what span does. So you've experienced power outages, right?
A lot.
We've had a couple.
We've had two big ones in the last couple of years.
And so let's say you had batteries and you had that outage, and let's pretend you kind of knew what that outage length was going to be. You could look at the app, and it actually forces you to prioritize the loads. So you have categories of things that you want to keep on all the time, things that you might want to keep on all the times, and things that don't matter at all.
Right.
So when you have that outage, and you might think it's going to be 4 days, and you have one battery, well, you could just tell it, hey, just keep the refrigerator on and keep the lights on so we can get around, but no HVAC, and turn off the pool, all the things that are non-essential, which is really neat too.
Super smart. CJ, thanks for coming out to the job site.
I'm so glad I got there.
So fun to get a tour with a smart electrician on this span panel. We'll see y'all later. Out on that job site, it's pretty interesting to see those span panels in a 1970s house to really jump forward the technology and the ability. And that client in particular is a pretty interesting case because it was a client that said, hey, Matt and team, we really want span panels. This is a non-negotiable. And these are not inexpensive. I don't know if we've said yet, but if you just look at their website, the retail price on the panel itself, this box and everything that comes with it is $4,500. So this is not a quick, oh yeah, no problem, let's do that. You got to think about this, right? And especially when you got two in a house. And this client, it was like a non-negotiable. And there were some other things that they were very budget conscious about, but they knew they wanted this. And a big driver for them is electric car and future battery backup for whole house backup. And the client said, look, this is a non-negotiable. We got to do this when we remodel. We're actually not going to do solar yet and not going to do battery yet. It's in the future planning. They do have an electric car right now, but it was for them like an absolute necessity on this remodel. Funny enough, Cole, on your website, as I was kind of planning for this webinar, there's a quote on your website that I love, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact language, but basically said, look, if you're going to put batteries in your house and use those for backup in some way, shape, or form, it's almost a must. It's an absolute no-brainer to have a span panel. Will you kind of elaborate on that and give us a little bit more depth on that?
Happy to. Yeah, I've heard the same from homeowners who have had backup maybe already installed, then gotten span and have said, this was the missing piece to really give me the outage experience that I thought I was going to get when I invested $20,000, $30,000 into this home backup system. So that's not something that we invented in our marketing department. We're taking that directly out of the mouths of our homeowners and installers. And really, it's in our DNA. A number of the folks who started Span and founded this idea were motivated by what we were seeing in the home backup market. When do you care the most about your power and energy? When you've got scarce amount of it to go around in that outage situation.
Or none.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the Span panel from day one was designed with this outage experience in mind, and that's guided a lot of how we've built the product. Not relying on cloud connection kind of thing. But I'll get to some of those details in a second and answer your question directly, which is how does it make the backup battery experience better? Load management, right? That's kind of the key here. You can either over-design your battery so that the homeowner doesn't have to think about whether the pool's running, the back AC is running, they've left their lights on, whatever these other non-essential loads are. Or you can right-size the battery system for what they really need to be using. And I'm sure folks on the call here have seen this arc of partial home backup to now whole home backup kind of being the thing that everyone is after and where these battery companies are going. So you run more risk of people just not understanding what's going on. SPAN gives that understanding. SPAN allows you to prioritize ahead of the outage which loads are must-have, need to keep these on. It's my fridge, it's my router. Nice to have, if my battery's full, maybe I do want that other air conditioning system on. Maybe I want my pool to run just so it's cycling in a multi-day outage. And then there's the non-essential loads. Maybe this is your spa, or could be lights and outlets. Anything. It's totally customizable to your home and to your needs during that outage. And having that ability to control those loads in the outage, number one, gives you peace of mind, right? Number two, gives you flexibility so that if something changes one outage to the next, you've got friends staying in your second bedroom, you can re-enable those circuits. And number three, it's just more cost effective, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to oversize that battery system.
Maybe you don't need 2 or 3 batteries when one would do it. If I understand your app right, and I don't have personal experience with this, so this is a theoretical question. If I'm in an active outage, and I've got a SPAN panel, and I've got a Tesla Powerwall or one of the other manufacturers, a Franklin panel, Franklin battery, can I get real-time data like, hey, I'm using this amount of power, and if I continue in that realm, I'm going to be out of battery in 27 hours or 58 hours. Is that true? Did I understand that
That's
correctly?
exactly right. So let's start with what you get today without SPAN. You get backup, right? Your power's on. That's the most important thing. But for how long? That question's not often answered, by these systems.
I was not to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
please.
the question that I get as an electrical contractor is, well, if I install batteries, how long are they going to last in an outage? And I think that's just like it's such a crazy question. It's like, how big are your batteries? What do you have going? And this is before smart panel technology. There's no real way to answer that without having a data logger or some kind of machine that would actually record your usage, or a really complicated math figure of an average of you'd have to go through and add up every appliance and the kilowatt hours. And I think that is a question that SPAN kind of is answering in like the layman's term. Again, it's like a question I've had 1,000 times is, if I install batteries, or on the other hand, if I install a generator, how long is that fuel going to last? And the big question is, with battery technology, how long is my battery going to last in an outage, and what do you do with it?
We must be talking to the same homeowners,
Yeah.
because that's the same question that always comes up for me as well. So we have this feature today in our app. All SPAN homeowners with battery and SPAN can open up their app today and see how much time remaining is estimated in their system. And that's a customized estimation based on what's going on in their house in that moment, and like you say, how their usage has been for the recent history. We can do that with extremely high confidence because every single circuit position in the SPAN panel is monitored with high accuracy. So there's no guesswork involved in understanding where energy is going, how you're using it, and then how your preferences change that. So that's probably the most exciting piece for many homeowners when they first get the SPAN app set up, is they can go in and say, well, all right, let's say I have an outage. What if I was okay with my dryer shutting off? Oh, that actually gave me back 2 hours of backup time. So it's this very dynamic tool that helps them plan, and it removes the need to answer that question, or come up with an answer on site as a installer, as an electrician.
Yeah, and a simple answer, like, how does SPAN do that?
Data science magic, yeah. Well,
as far as like the components inside,
Yeah,
like, what's inside this
Will
thing?
you take that dead head off for us?
absolutely, yeah.
By the way, this is only powered by a 110 outlet. This isn't a hot bus right here, right? CJ,
No, we're not energized.
we're
are
not
safe.
energized, exactly.
Oh, you give me a heart attack just touching it, but confirmed. Yeah. So there is a lot of data science that kind of ultimately gives you that answer. But that's powered by all of this hardware, right? So what you see here is the span panel busing. You'll notice the standard circuit breakers. These are the same breakers that you probably already stock on your truck. We're compatible with most, if not all, of the leading stab-on 1-inch pitch.
So in other words,
breakers.
those aren't like Wi-Fi enabled.
These are as dumb as they come breakers.
Span-made breakers, right?
That's right. That's right. These are your standard circuit breakers. Again, we were certified to work with a number of different brands, and we leave the job of overcurrent protection and short circuit to the breaker. That's what it's designed for.
Yeah.
Then create this kind of powerful layer of control and communication behind it.
Yeah.
So to the question about outages, how do we know what's going on? Every single one of these tabs has both control and monitoring behind it. And that's all fed into a relatively powerful local compute system in the span panel that is also networked. So when we have the cloud connection, we can take advantage of some of the models and things that you run in the cloud to do advanced data science, but that's not necessary.
The computer's in the housing. Like the computer is local.
That's right. Yeah, every span panel has a powerful local compute. We can get into the weeds, right?
Yeah.
So I like to describe it as sort of the lizard brain aspect and the frontal lobe aspect. The computer, the frontal lobe is your Wi-Fi, your cellular, some of your very intelligent optimization. That's a replaceable component. So as that technology changes over time, that can be replaced. Below that, the lizard brain is sort of your hardened industrial grade monitoring and control technology. And I don't use that term industrial grade lightly. It's truly what these components are, designed to last as long as a traditional panel would. So that's all embedded here. Factory assembled. There's no CT connections. There's no, fiddly low voltage tap type of things going on. So it's tested and it's ready to go all in one package.
So
awesome.
I think I think our span install was possibly around 2 years ago. It was a little early in California. We got approached to install it, and so we went through the certification. And I think the first thing that came to my brain when someone said, "Hey, there's this new panel out. It's called Span. Check it out." And I thought, new panel, like that sounds. There have been other companies that have pushed out new technology, and I think the biggest concern from an electrical contractor's point of view was, oh, great, that sounds awesome. I can't even get normal breakers right now during these times. How am I going to get these new proprietary breakers? And then they told me, oh, no. These are actually using breakers that are off the shelf at your local hardware store. And so I think that's pretty important, right? I mean, the fact that we don't have to, seek out this special breaker. Everything that's proprietary is internal, and then the rest of the components are the stuff that I need to go source when I'm going to install something for a customer. These are just at our normal supply house or box store.
Supply is one reason that we went with standard breakers. Flexibility is another. We have here, a tandem breaker. We work with quads. We go 15 all the way up to 90 amps breakers in this product. And it's building a smart breaker, throwing AFCI and GFCI into that mix.
That's what I was going to throw out to the electricians out there. It's like, this will take an arc fault.
Correct.
This will take an arc fault GFCI breaker.
Correct. Yep.
That's awesome. Okay.
From several manufacturers,
yeah,
too,
that's
right?
again
Not even just
okay.
one. When I first heard about Span, I was like, oh, no. I would definitely not put that in a client's house, because I was assuming, and before I knew about it, that it was your breakers. And I've had Wi-Fi outlets before. I've had Wi-Fi switches that have gone bad. I've had, now they make Wi-Fi breakers, some manufacturers. I'm real skeptical about this. Wi-Fi enabled anything, because I feel like what if it goes bad? And so I think you guys were pretty genius by saying, look, we're going to put the frontal cortex in, the brain that runs everything, and then frankly these are kind of dumb breakers. This is kind of like, if this was bricked out, everything would still work.
It would
and
be
that's
identical to
the
your
part
panel,
that allows me to go, oh yeah, this is actually pretty dang cool.
I mean,
like
this
that.
is the same SKU number that I've been installing for 20 years. It hasn't changed. Okay.
That's cool.
I think important to
That's
know.
well done by Span. I
And then you
appreciate
said
that.
Wi-Fi, and I think that's something that came to my mind too instantly. It's like, well, okay, so I have this span panel and I have a battery and now I have an outage. What happens if my network goes down? You know, or am I just like paying for this technology that is now not operational because my network's down?
It's a great question.
Absolutely. It's sort of the question, right? You know, it's an outage. When is your internet most likely to go down? You know, probably when the tree branch severs your downcomer with your cable network, you know.
Yeah, with your overhead service with your service tied to it.
Absolutely. So that was a day zero design consideration for us. So every battery system that we pair with, and you know, we integrate with them and actually make sure we can establish local direct connection to that system, so that regardless of, you know, your internet service provider being up or down, we can still talk directly. There's no cloud communication. I will say we do have a 4G LTE cell module in every panel that the customer doesn't pay for, because we want to give the best possible ability to connect to this device in outages. We're borrowing from, you know, the backup battery industry there. So the instances where that's happened, we've tried to minimize, but because it is a very valid concern, we've thought about that. So when you set your priorities, they'll continue to operate, go on-grid, off-grid. And then beyond that, the panel does have the ability to broadcast a Wi-Fi network that you can connect to directly. And there's some interesting and exciting things that we're building out there to give homeowners, you know, more control and more tools that do not depend on that internet connection.
So you said
Let me pause you for one quick second.
Do it.
By the way, anybody who's watching this live, we're getting some fantastic questions. Go to the Q&A tab. Don't use the chat feature. I'm not looking at it. No one else is. If you got a question, throw it on the Q&A. We're going to ask questions. We're going to answer questions at the end. I'm getting so many, we might have to go a little longer than an hour, FYI.
You said
These are some great questions.
You said we, so the network goes down, you said we can still communicate it with it. Are you talking homeowner or the preset settings that they've already established during commissioning? They've already been using it for, you know, a couple other traditional outages where they just lost power for whatever reason. You're saying that when the network goes down, we can still, we being the homeowner, can still communicate?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I mostly meant the panel, right?
Okay,
so you've set your settings, and the panel will continue to adjust based on the state of energy of the battery. You know, is it low, and we should be more conservative and keep the fridge and the lights, you know,
the parameters that the homeowner and the installer set are still in the main CPU.
Right,
okay.
Exactly, and that persists through power on and off and all of this. But you know, over time, this system gets smarter over time because it's really software enabled. The hardware is, like I said, and I'll repeat, industrial grade and designed to last. You know, relays aren't going to go out of date from a technology perspective.
No, we've been using
software is
relays.
going to get better.
Yeah.
So our customers today have even seen this, where we pushed software updates and added new functionality. So local control is something that we've heard from a lot of homeowners and installers, and is something that we're thinking about more and more, and you know, will eventually be an option for homeowners.
Go ahead.
Here's a super simple.
These are so, this is so fun.
This is a
keep
super simple question, and I know the answer to it, but I want you to explain it. When we're actually, let's pretend we have an outage and we have it programmed to turn off the our outage is going to be 3 days because our utility company said there was a really bad storm outage, and it's going to take a couple days to get up and running, which you guys have experienced in Austin.
We were out for almost a week.
So let's just say that our priorities are set to where our high priorities were our refrigeration and like minimal lighting. Now, how does SPAN tell the breakers to turn off? Is it tripping the breaker?
That's a great question.
And just a follow-up is, if it turns it off, can it turn it back on?
So we don't trip the breaker, right? The breaker will always stay on unless there's an actual wiring fault.
Okay.
So we have our own first-party direct control behind the breakers.
Cool.
Again, this gets back to your point about not needing smart breakers. We can use the same SKU that you're already stocking for these overcurrent protection devices.
Yeah.
And we're not doing these hops over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to try and get a signal. You know, this is all, like I said, factory integrated, direct communication within our system. So we can guarantee that the circuit will turn on and off when we need it to. I don't know about you, but you know, Wi-Fi Bluetooth pairing is one of my major first world problems. You know, putting that in the critical path for your home electrical system in an outage was a decision that we veered away from early on.
I like
that's
that.
really good.
Because, I mean, there have been breakers out over the past few years that you can shunt trip, but you can't reset them.
Correct.
Some of the generator load shedding stuff that we have and have had for years, we can turn off, but we can't turn back on. But SPAN can do that. I could be in Europe, and I could get a power outage.
Yep.
I don't know why I'm in Europe, but
Dude,
maybe
you're on
maybe
the-
I go to
Can I
Europe,
come? Yeah,
and
you
maybe
do
I
all
have
the
a
time.
SPAN, but I could be remote, and I can turn off something, let's say, even for a practical reason, not inside an outage. Let's say a practical reason is
a
someone,
great point.
I'm away, and I realize I do not want my hot tub running for, the month that I'm gone.
Oh, that's a great question.
And then again, I don't know why I'm gone for a month, but I can do that from my SPAN app in Europe.
You're on the beach in Ibiza with the pina colada.
Ooh, I
you
like
pull out
that.
your SPAN app.
Okay.
And absolutely off on any circuit in the panel, and you get that feedback right away. You can see, also what it's consuming. So one example might be, did I leave, my hair dryer on? Right. That's kind of the classic example.
Curling iron. That's
Curling
my
iron.
wife. I
Yeah.
don't want to call her out publicly, but we've left a couple.
She's not watching, don't worry.
We've left a couple curling
She's not on a
irons
SPAN panel, I
a
can
couple
tell you.
flat irons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the classic example, but there's so many examples like that, and it may be that kind of peace of mind thing, but it also might be energy savings, right?
Again, it's
I'm
like a
going
hot
on
tub.
vacation. Do I
Yeah.
really need my hot tub running?
Yeah. Okay. And
Did you
the-
power cycle your router too from
You
from a distance?
technically you could do that.
That's pretty cool.
another super easy one, but I think it's kind of something that is important to know is how does SPAN know what this 2-pole 30 is? Like this, let's pretend this 2-pole 30 is my air conditioner. How the heck does SPAN know what breaker that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two apps.
Okay.
One is our homeowner app. That's where you see the energy consumption, the breakdown of how you're using energy in your home, these settings that we talked about with backup priorities. And we have what we call our installer app, which is designed for the technician.
That's what we have in the field
Right.
as a SPAN installer. Okay.
And typically, that's maybe about 20 minutes, give or take, if you are familiar with the process, to go in and you're essentially digitally filling the schedule.
Right on the phone.
Right.
Okay.
So you're going in and saying this is a 30 amp quad. It's connected to the water heater.
Yep.
And bang bang, move on down the list. You're establishing and verifying that the system is up to date.
Okay.
Right there on site, connecting it with EV charger,
Okay.
backup battery system, and getting that verification so that you have all green checks before you leave. And that's just another area that we've gotten so much good feedback on and are really excited to add more tools because we have voltage readings and all this fantastic data that I would love to see, any installer would love to see. And it's, again, kind of the beauty of software that we can, over time, add these things in.
And so from an installer, and let's pretend Matt, the homeowner, I install it, I commission it, I just did that process like you said. As a homeowner, does Matt have to do anything else after that? Let's pretend he's not a techie nerd. Does he, and he just set his priorities and he goes, I'm going to trust my system, my batteries are installed. Does Matt have to do any upkeep or,
No, it's as easy as opening an email and downloading an app like you've done 1,000 times,
Okay.
I'm sure, on your
Cool.
phone.
Sounds easy.
That said, if you're engaged with your electrical system and you really want to geek out and label things, you can go in and add appliances so that you know what's on each circuit. You can group things into rooms, since, as we know, sometimes the layout of the panel doesn't perfectly map to how your house is set up. So
Homeowner can
yes,
do that? Okay,
yes,
cool.
homeowner
That's a
can do
good
that.
note, I
They
think.
can rename circuits,
Okay.
right? In my installer called this hot tub, I wanted to call it my party tub.
Or-
Right? It's it's customizable. It's your house. It's customizable.
Yeah, or
in that
maybe
way.
it's a retrofit like we saw today, where there was some existing wiring, and maybe they didn't notice that the 2-pole or the single pole 15 was bedroom lights. It was also the office lights, so they can edit that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. No one's ever showed up to a retrofit and had the panel mislabeled. So I don't
No,
think
never.
that's,
Every time I open a sub panel, every job
always
I've been on, it's
perfect.
perfectly
You know
accurate.
exactly what
Spare,
something's
spare,
done.
spare.
Yeah, yeah. Plugs.
Yep.
Plug.
Yeah, lights.
Yep.
Speaking of plugs, I got to point out from a builder's perspective, most panel boxes over the years either get painted to look prettier, are hidden somewhere because they look ugly. And on the remodel job that we're doing, it's front and center, right in the garage. As soon as you walk in, you can't miss it. And number one, the panel box cover feels kind of iPhone-ish. It actually has a glass,
Right.
pretty front. But honestly, I didn't realize that you guys had a light on the inside. And when we opened the panel today at that remodel, I was totally, holy cow, this thing has LED lights in it. So what you're seeing here on this display model, this isn't studio lights. You know, we didn't add this from my video team. That's actually those, you may not be able to see it super well, but there's like a strip of 3 LEDs.
Yeah, look at that.
On one side and the other. There we go. And it's got a little switch on there that knows when the panel opens, and it kind of soft opens. There's an experience that comes along with this. So is that worth $4,500 to you? Probably not. But it's one of those things that you're like, okay, I paid a lot of money for this. I actually feel, it feels good, right?
Well,
it's like pulling open that iPhone box.
You've built a lot of houses where the homeowners walk in and say, you know, they're proud of something, and it might not just be the crown molding, it might be, you know, the stone out front, but I mean, I could see it being kind of
homeowners showing.
Yeah, I mean, for the certain person too.
Sure.
What about the door? What if I'm installing it? Can I order a different box with another door that opens a different way?
So every panel that we ship has the door configurable from either side. There's swappable mounting brackets.
So I could have side by side, and
you can have your French door experience.
Really, and I can do that on site.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely,
great.
absolutely.
No extra parts.
Meant to be configurable in that way.
Really
smart.
cool.
Like a refrigerator, you can swap the door.
And I can't do that with any really low setter. Sometimes you can flip it, but most of them, if you have a main breaker, you can't flip the dead front or the door after.
You know the other thing these guys make too that I just found out about is they make a trim ring. So if you're doing a remodel and you got an overcut on your drywall to slide your panel in, and you got this jagged, nasty cut, you don't have to bring the painter back and the drywall guy to make it look prettier on the side. Pop
so
the
it
trim
makes
ring
my
on.
job easier when I'm installing. Okay,
Well, it doesn't
cool.
make your job easier. It makes you look good.
It makes me look better. Yes.
It makes the builder makes the electrician like, oh wow, man, those guys did a great job on this.
So I can go in grandma's house, pull the old sub panel out, retrofit this one. Talking about where it fits and how it fits. Am I ordering like a traditional load center? Am I ordering a flush mount or a surface mount or a NEMA 3R if it's outside, or an indoor if it's inside? What am I doing there? How many part numbers do we got?
Great question. There's one SKU of the span panel, which keeps things a little simpler. It's an indoor and outdoor rated box, so this is a NEMA 3R enclosure.
So this can get rained on.
It can get rained on, it can get stormed on. Anything that, anywhere you would put a traditional load center, you can put a span panel.
That's pretty cool.
So
it is thicker in depth though than some load centers.
It's
correct?
about 5.9 inches in depth in total.
Depth.
Yep.
Okay, so if you had a 2x4 wall or even a 2x6 wall, you're going to come out of that wall a little bit.
Yeah, a little under 2 inches.
Got
it is definitely designed to mount between 16-inch on-center studs, so that goes right back to replacing the existing load center.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit deeper because we've got more smarts going on inside of it.
So I can install it in a standard stud bay that my existing sub panel is installed that I've had for 20 years. It could fit in that.
Yep.
And then what about new and I'm putting it on a concrete wall? I can surface mount it and it doesn't look funny. It doesn't look out of place like if I would do that.
Oh, I think it looks better than a traditional panel.
Okay, so surface mount
Pretty
for the technical electricians that are wondering, it is surface mount friendly. It is flush mount friendly.
Interior, exterior.
Interior, exterior, and it's one panel. I can order 4 of these. I can have them sit in the shop. I mean, that get a little overhead, but it might be worth it, and the price might come down in the next few years. So it might be something that I could stock as far as like, if I had a service company, I could have one SKU number on the shelf, and I can go take care of my customers. If I needed to install one and I couldn't get one, it's the same part number.
Same SKU, and while we're on kind of configurability and SKUs, we support a main breaker between 100 and 200 amps with 175, 150, and 125 as well.
And this is
field swappable.
And this is a square D main breaker.
QOM2,
so I could go to my square D supplier right down the street and pick one up.
That's pretty sweet.
And then what about, how many breakers can I jam in this bad boy?
32 spaces.
Okay.
Each space could take a tandem, though that's a pretty crowded crowded enclosure there, but that flexibility exists. Each space is rated for up to 90 amps. So even larger sub panels and saunas and loads like that typically are suitable for a 90 amp breaker. Maybe they're on 100. We have a lot of jobs where folks drop that down to a 90, and there's no real challenge there.
Yeah.
So in other words, you could do this as your main panel and put all your main loads on there, but all your lighting circuits you could put in a sub panel. You just have less knowledge of what's happening, but it could still run all the functionality.
And every variation in between, right? You could double up lighting circuits on tandem. And then we also have 200 amp rated sub-feed lugs.
Okay,
So if you need to
wanted to
pass
ask.
through a series sub panel, that's possible.
So let's say, I could run 2 spans side by side. I can feed in 200, and I needed a little bit more, and I had some extra money to spend, and I wanted a second panel. I can feed through my lugs into my.
That's right.
Okay, cool. That's a lot of load centers don't have feed
I
through
have
lugs unless I
no
go
idea what you're talking
commercial.
about, but I'm gonna
So I'm
assume
just
that's a good
speaking to the
thing.
nerdy electricians or the contractors or homeowners that care about that stuff. And then also, what can I feed? Let's, for lack of better words, a dumb panel. Like, let's pretend I have an outbuilding. An ADU is a really popular one, an
that's a good
accessory
point.
dwelling unit, or a guest house that I don't really care if it's on batteries. If I had one, I can feed a load center next to it. Can I control that whole load center, or how would I?
So the way to think about it is every space has monitoring and control.
Okay.
So if you've got your single dipole 30 amp water heater, that's what you're controlling. That's what you're monitoring.
Okay.
It could be a sub panel, right? You could
Yeah.
have a 60 or a 90 amp sub
That
panel.
goes out to the pool house.
It's going out to the pool house, and that's going to be shown as a group and controlled as a group.
It's going to
if
say
it's a
pool
dumb
house.
panel. Yep.
Okay. And then I don't care, or maybe I just want to turn off the whole pool house. I can just remotely turn just that breaker off.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
We got to switch gears because we are going long, and this is awesome. But we haven't even gotten into EV chargers and how this could integrate with your current or your future EV. I was in California with CJ this week, and I didn't even realize in California you have to provide either power for 2 EVs if you have a
It's
2-car
one
garage,
EV. Yeah, they
one.
require us to have at least one EV charging circuit in a
Okay.
garage, and then
Or- or a conduit for it, right?
Yeah,
For
they'll let
future.
that, and that might change. I gotta, the codes are constantly changing, so I'm assuming sooner than later they're just gonna make us, and probably you guys too, not just
I'm
California.
sure. I'm sure, there's
And
no
usually
doubt
the
about it.
other states follow suit after California.
So let's talk about EV chargers, and you actually have your Span EV charger right behind you there on the wall.
That's right.
Cole, talk us through the overview first of EV charging, how Span integrates with it, and maybe why Span might be a good choice if you've got an EV.
Absolutely. So we call this product Span Drive. It's a level 2 EV charger. And for us, again, I like to start with the why. Why an EV charger? It's often the new load that triggers your panel upgrade or your service upgrade, right?
I just bought a Tesla. I have an old sub panel. Mr. Electrician, can you come put an EV charger in? No, sir, you can't because you don't have enough space, right?
Space or capacity,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So that you hear that quite a bit, and just to again kind of the why, 80% of charging is done at home. This is a DOE study, and it makes sense when you think about it. Where is your car sitting most of the time? Driveway, garage. So we engineered this product from the ground up to pair seamlessly with the Span panel.
Smart.
And we didn't need to spend extra, cost and complexity in putting Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and brains in this device because we already have this central brain for your home that has more context than any EV charger will ever have about your house because it knows what's going on every single circuit.
Smart.
So as far as specs, just to rattle through them quickly, level 2 EV charger, certified to the UL standards for EV charging, goes up to 48 amps, which is, for most cars that are sold today, all Teslas included, that's what the onboard AC charger maxes out at. So even if you had higher than that, your car probably wouldn't take it.
So in other words, you've got a 220/50 breaker in there.
60, yeah.
60, and then that's getting up to 48 amps out of that.
48 amps continuous. The really amazing thing about this product and why we developed it, launched it, and what we're extremely excited to see proliferate is the real-time control that you can do here. And what I mean by that is rather than setting a dip switch or a dial on the install date to 20 amps because that's all the spreadsheet
Which other
told you
EV
could.
chargers require me to do. When I install, I have to select what breaker I'm feeding with inside. I got to get inside, which most homeowners are not going to do, and I wouldn't recommend. And not to mention
You've already
the
put the breaker
wiring
in, yeah.
from there to the EV charger is only rated for what probably they installed it for. We set the dip switch, and that's all it charges to.
Right, and that's a fixed
That's
max,
it.
and that you've
Okay.
you've already made that decision at install. So this comes back to a theme of flexibility, right? Just like with the backup, we want to give the homeowner the most possible within safe and reasonable limits.
Okay.
So in that situation, maybe it's a 100 amp service, right? Rather than getting the 20 amp or the 16 amp EV charger, you can get a full 48, and this system will monitor in real time what's coming in through the service feeders and start to throttle back what the car is charging. So,
Wow.
48 amps, 47, 32, 30, 29, as you're increasing load.
So in other words, I kick on my oven, my air conditioner, I'm hitting the microwave. It now can throttle that load back from, the max amperage to, oh, I'm going to go here. But then the oven goes off, and the kids go to bed, and the microwave's off. Now, boom, it goes back up.
Right, exactly. And
That's really smart.
And why would you want to do that versus just going all out? Because the alternative, rather than dialing back, you have to dial up or increase the feeder wires coming in from your service, which is
costs money.
Big money.
I
Slash is
I
hard
can
to
say
do.
this with a straight face that I had a friend text me a week ago saying they got quoted $30,000 for a trenched upgrade because of EV charging, and I was like, oh, I have a product for you. It's
should
a
use
real
this.
it's a real challenge.
Over the past few years the bearer of bad news. Doing that. These really excited people come home with Teslas, his and hers, or two of them because most family households have two cars, and then they realize their 1,900 square foot cute bungalow that they've just spent $1 million to remodel only has 100 amps going to it.
Yeah.
I can still charge two cars in my garage.
You can charge them as fast as safe and possible, on that service, right? So they will
that's cool.
automatically adjust.
But what happens with someone that says, well, the Tesla or any manufacturer, most manufacturers, I think with the EVs, you can go into the car settings and dial it down, but that car won't know when Matt's AC turns on in a summer, a Texas summer.
When it's a 105 outside.
And
Right.
the Tesla won't, or the car won't know that, but Span knows?
Well, and in that scenario, you're relying on the homeowner doing something to potentially make sure that their main breaker doesn't trip.
Yeah, right. They crank the thermostat and they're charging both cars. Span can...
Span will automatically manage that and then serve up exactly what's happening
huge.
in real time, in our app.
So I
a
can
really
keep my
big deal.
125 amp service, still buy two EVs, as long as and the only caveat is there are times that Span will dial back the AC or vice versa through software.
And let's talk about those times, right? Because anyone who's looked at hourly or 15-minute or minute data, even it's very peaky, and you're designing around those peaks, just like the broader electric grid, right? We have to design it so we can serve the peaks.
Right.
Those peaks are typically minutes long, right? It's a water heater cycle that happens to be coincident with your air conditioned cycling while EV's charging and you're running the microwave kind of situation.
Yeah, the brownout happens at 5 p.m.
So it's,
not 2 p.m.
I don't think it's disingenuous to say imperceptible, right, when these throttling events happen, and rare for most homes. If you've got the hot tub and 4 EV charge, we're not going to make any guarantees. You still have to kind of think about what you're putting in.
Sure.
But for most homes, and we have great insight on this from the panels that we've deployed and just this industry data out there. It's not that common in most cases, and there have been studies published by other groups that show 100, 125 amps is suitable for full electrification for most folks.
And I think maybe it's going in the direction where the power companies might not have all this power that we're going to require as everyone goes EV.
Yeah.
Or it might take years and years and years for that infrastructure to build. We can do it now with Span.
Yeah, you can. This is live today.
The charger's got to cost a pretty penny though, right?
MSRP is $750, which is pretty
It's not bad at all.
on par
I think
with
that's
what you see.
That's about what other people are charging right
That's
there.
really cool.
But now you've got the full functionality of the Span panel too.
And that whole home insight, right? You going back to the very first point that I made about smart devices, connected devices, being smart but maybe not aware of each other.
Okay.
We're trying to solve that problem here, right? Rather than having a smart thermostat, a smart EV charger, smart outlets, smart this, smart that are all run by different apps and have to coordinate, probably won't
I
coordinate.
hate flipping between
Right.
apps on my phone.
And not to put you on the spot, but you're talking about all these different apps. I've heard a lot about like, okay, it's another expense I'm going to accrue, and in 2-3 years it's going to be gone, or another
Right,
expense
now it's $50 a month instead of $20 a month.
and then I'm going to need a new one. Do you foresee, this keeping up with technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the hardware, like we were talking about before, is designed to last. It's industrial grade through and through, and if there ever were a failure, let's say with the breaker, that's easily replaceable with the standard breaker. And the whole assembly is designed to be swapped as well. So it's designed for serviceability, but it's also designed so that it doesn't need to be serviced. And we run extensive reliability testing, borrowing from our a lot of collective experience in automotive industry building products. So these have gone through hell, quite literally, in terms of temperature, humidity, salt corrosion, power cycling, things like that.
So it's kind of, I mean, what we've heard, and I've heard over the last year or two, is like, Span has now invented something that has not been reinvented for 100 years. That's not an exact number, but let's just pretend it's about 100 years.
That's about right. Yeah.
Is this the next 100 years?
Right. Yeah. I think the smart panel absolutely. This is an evolution that's going to continue to move us forward in the load center space. It's just it's the right place to put this intelligence and control. And I'll say, we're not stopping here. We're actively developing new hardware and software, right? So if you buy this and put this in your house today, it's going to get smarter over time. We release new features. We're constantly improving on this very flexible and robust hardware platform. But there's just a lot more that we want to do and can do with the data and insights around power and energy that are coming off the panel.
And I can use this off-grid. I mean, like, let's pretend I built, this would help a lot if someone, and I hear it going that way in some areas where, batteries are here, you don't have to tie to utility anymore.
Yeah.
I can use this off-grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a segue into that, some examples of these software features that we've released have been new battery integrations, and also this power-up functionality, which is the ability to add amps on a constrained service that we were talking about with the EV charging. That's fully software enabled.
I have a townhouse with 100 amps, and it's not going to get changed. Let's pretend. And so that's,
absolutely.
Okay,
so
cool.
just to give a few specific examples of how the product is getting smarter since the day we launched it, 2 or 3 years ago. And your question was about backup.
Yes.
So can we continue operating in an outage? How do we coordinate with the battery? Was that the question?
Yeah, or off grid. I mean, I don't have to be tied to the utility. I could have a bank of batteries.
Full off grid.
And then I can also, because in an off grid you're not going to have outages because you're not tied to the grid.
Right.
But you have to regulate your power consumption. If your solar array can't produce, Span will do it too.
That's right, but I will. I'll add the caveat to that we are very intentional about the battery systems that we pair with today, so that we're making sure the experience is seamless, flawless. So today we're, by the numbers, about 80% of the market share fits under the category of integrated with Span, and we're constantly looking to add in new battery systems there.
Okay,
so in the off-grid scenario, if it is a Tesla Powerwall, Enphase system, SolarEdge system, you'll have that automatic real-time load adjustment based on battery state of energy. If you were to install this on your DIY off-grid or another system's off-grid, you would still have manual control and more visibility than you would otherwise have.
Okay. So the battery systems that you just mentioned, the big brands that we see in here and I've read about and I've talked about are preferred, or what would you say if I said, hey, what battery should I buy? Or I got some existing batteries. Is it compatible? Is there a list of compatible batteries?
Absolutely. Our website has this list, but just for the sake of folks on the line, it's Tesla Powerwall, SolarEdge Energy Hub Inverter, Enphase's IQ battery, and we're actively working on some new ones as well,
Awesome.
which is pretty exciting.
Players.
Yeah, that's huge.
So that list gets updated, all the time, and our engineering team is hard at work on some new ones and expanding that coverage because we genuinely do believe that the homeowner or the installer should have that choice and that flexibility. But it's also important to us that it's done right and it works well, and they're not going to get calls from their homeowner. The installer is not going to have to middleman, some integration challenges and that kind of thing, which is no fun for anybody.
Yeah, because electrician, builder, I myself, I won't speak for you, but apprehensive of new technology or something that I'm not necessarily comfortable or have experienced, but it sounds pretty robust. I mean, it doesn't sound like, well, it reinvented technology. It's kind of just, it's taking that 100-year-old technology and just making it better.
That's right. It's an evolution of the 100-year-old panel board. There's no new science here. There's no nuclear reactor in a panel board kind of thing. But
you're not reinventing the wheel. It's just you're making it better.
I thought I heard something about cold fusion in these panels. Is that
don't spread that one.
Just kidding. Delete. We got to switch to some Q&A, and a lot of the Q&A has actually been answered. You've asked him several of the Q&As that were kind of out there, but some of the things that we have missed that were on several questions were give us the overview on solar integration, and then also talk to us beyond that on standard natural gas, propane generators, and maybe even the option of somebody that has a plug-in style portable generator.
That's a great
question.
Great.
Let's do solar first.
That's three questions in one.
I'm registered. We'll hit them. So solar is an easy answer. If it's just your standard grid interactive, grid tie solar inverter, not a backup system, that lands in the span panel. We monitor it and we show that data to the homeowner, which is great because then that data is really just the production curve. You can get it in their app, but you get it with more granularity typically in the span panel, and can save you the cost of the 5-year cell module and all those other components that are needed to kind of make that inverter smart. It's a lot like this, right? Where you're leveraging intelligence and communications in one box. So as long as the solar inverter or the solar system is compatible with our system, 240 volts. Up to 90 amps per stab.
Standard issue solar systems.
You're not going to see many that kind of are crossed off that list. For generators, the span panel can be installed downstream of an automatic transfer switch or a manual transfer switch, which you would need anyway.
So ATS first, and then the span panel.
As the load center. That's right.
Yeah. And we've been on projects where they have propane or natural gas generators. They do have Tesla power walls, and they can play together. So if your batteries run out, you can still go.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because in those scenarios, we follow the lead of the battery system, and they're managing the generator. So that looks a lot like the existing battery experience. Let's say your generator only, maybe it is a manual transfer switch with a twist lock or suicide cord or, pick your
don't
favorite.
use those.
Portable, I will call it and it's totally legal with the correct interlock or the correct manual transfer switch, but a plug and play, a Honda.
I'm joking with the suicide cord terminology.
I actually messed that up one time and learned the hard way. I didn't electrocute, but someone called me out on a video years ago about messing that up.
You've got a portable standby generator. It's the same story,
right?
I
got a nice Honda in the garage.
Exactly. You connect it, and then you pull out the span app and manage your load. In those scenarios, because those systems aren't as intelligent, we don't do automated sensing or fuel monitoring.
Got it.
Maybe that's something we would consider in the future. It's definitely come up, but that's not part of the experience today.
But
the manual control absolutely is, and you can pre-configure by turning things off. And especially if it's a manual transfer switch, you're already in that.
And I
so
feel
if
like
I've only got a 30 amp input from a generator, this is only going to have 30 amps to work with.
And I feel like someone like I think you have an automatic.
I have an ATS.
But I have a lot of customers with manual, and so when you have a manual transfer switch and a portable generator that you deploy during an outage, you're already aware that you're going to have to plug it in and you're going to have to pull a transfer switch, and that's not the biggest deal in the world if they're trained and it's installed correctly. So I don't see an issue.
Yep.
Sure is nice to have that automatic though.
What about, and it's just something that I hear a lot and I'm curious about, is like the people who are talking about security, and it's another something watching us, even though we all have iPhones or smartphones and computers and tablets listening and your Alexas and stuff. Are we talking security issues?
We're not talking security issues. No, we've actually spent a lot of engineering effort following industry best practices to make sure
That's good.
both security and privacy are treated with the sort of utmost importance at Span. And yes, we have phones, and we're sort of used to these things. This is a new class of smart device,
get it, yeah.
so I wouldn't dismiss people's concern. I think it's right to ask the question, but the answer is it's a high priority for us, and we do not take it lightly, and we've followed industry best practices around data management and security and things like this. And the same is true of physical security. The panel can be locked, so someone can't get access to your breakers.
That's nice.
And there's a lot of thinking and engineering that's gone into making sure somebody can't do nefarious things by plugging in wires into the system.
That's good. Is there a monthly subscription fee?
There's not.
Okay, that's pretty sweet. I didn't realize
Everything
that.
has a monthly subscription fee right
Yeah,
now.
that's right. Rob has a question that's a good one. We kind of talked about it. He said, I may have missed this, but if smart technology becomes unserviceable for whatever reason, would the panel still work as a dumb panel without the homeowner having to do anything?
Yeah, that feels like a plant of a question, because the answer is yes. If the panel stops working for whatever reason, that's just another advantage of having these traditional breakers in place that are doing the job that they're designed to do.
Turn it off.
Yep, you can turn it on and off to service it, but it'll continue doing the dumb panel functions of overcurrent and short circuit protection.
That makes sense. Ed asks about surge protection. Is there anything built in with surge, or how would surge work with this if you want a surge protector?
Yeah, typically it's the same story as the breakers. So install an off-the-shelf surge protector. We don't have compatibility limitations. There's some pretty neat products now that have breaker integrated surge.
Ah,
so you can have
interesting.
two 15 or 20 amp single poles, and then the surge kind of sits in the middle in that quad format.
Yep, yeah,
so
that's cool.
we've recommended those, but if you stock a traditional sort of plug-on surge, as long as it matches the breaker brands that we work with, that's great. And the panel itself obviously is resistant to sort of lightning strike surge, things like that, but it's not in this version listed as a
surge.
SPD.
Okay, so I can go buy a third-party surge protector, no problem.
That's
We're
right.
good to go. Okay.
It's kind of a random question. I like this one. John says, can the Bluetooth/Wi-Fi be turned off and hardwired, potentially for security or health exposure issues?
We
They
didn't
don't
talk
want
about
they don't want the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi signal in their house.
So there's an Ethernet connection, so you can definitely choose,
Plug
and
it in.
we recommend to use Ethernet because this is, it's infrastructure in your house. You're better off having things connected
Plugged.
to each other.
So RJ45,
Standard.
Cat 6 back to my AV rack or my router that my
Super
sub
smart.
provider. That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
That's
At
fine.
Wi-Fi. So like if I can't get a hard line to a retrofit, maybe Wi-Fi compatibility.
Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and cell all work together. You don't have to pick one. In fact, it's the best if you can do both Wi-Fi and Ethernet, and the system's smart enough to say, oh, Ethernet's available, let's use that. Then
So
we'll
it
go to
would, in
Wi-Fi.
effect, for John's question, it could turn off the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi.
So just to be clear for that question, we don't have a switch that toggles off Wi-Fi. We'll file that under feature request because
Okay.
it's come up at least
All right.
once before.
Feature request, John. That was a good one.
And don't want to lead you astray.
And maybe software upgrade. Maybe it's just a firmware upgrade.
Potentially, I won't promise anything.
Okay.
I'm famous for not promising new features, but I love talking about them.
Speaking of new features, this actually wasn't a question, but it's kind of integrated to several questions. Are there any additional things in the pipeline that you can mention, even if you don't give us a date? For instance, we were talking about your 32, what's the right word? Position?
32, yeah, 32 breaker spaces.
32 breaker spaces. Is there a possibility of a bigger size span in the future?
Yeah, I'll take that opportunity maybe to highlight a couple of future things, both this year and maybe beyond. On the hardware side, we have this single SKU today. Everyone's dream house is a little bit different. We're not oblivious to the fact that sub panels exist, and this is bigger than a sub panel, right? So absolutely get it, but you start somewhere with product development, and you get it out and you learn, and we've just loved the feedback that we've gotten. Both bigger, smaller has come up, and I'll say in the most vague way possible, it's something that our engineering team is working on pretty hard. We want to be able to serve every home, and serve every home as easy as dropping in a traditional load center.
A tiny little apartment, maybe a 12 maybe a 12 or a 24 space panel.
That's right.
Okay.
But today, this is what you'll see in your, Stockton
And
distribution.
again, a stud bay, and most closets can handle this. A garage. I mean, I can't see a major issue with the space. I mean, of course, it's a little bit bigger than a normal load center, but
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not that
in
much
most
bigger.
applications. I
So
think.
that's hardware, and I wish I could go into more detail here, but I won't. Just know that we're working hard on some very interesting
Maybe
things.
off camera.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
Later.
beers after or
Yeah.
something. But on the software side, one thing that I'll highlight, we talked a minute ago about the EV charging throttling. So this product, the software product or functionality, which we like to call Power Up, is the idea of adding in new electric loads, new electric machines into your house without being constrained. Your 100 amp service.
Yep.
Maybe it's not just the EV charging. Maybe it's HVAC. Maybe it's water heating.
I did want to touch on that.
So we're working on this now and have started doing even some initial pilots on controlling more loads. And it should be no surprise because we've announced public partnerships with folks like Kenmore and other appliance manufacturers. So working our way down the list of high power, high energy loads to not necessarily have to rely on opening relays, which is a pretty crude method if you're going slightly over your limit, but it's very effective and reliable. So from a permitting and codes perspective, it's a great strategy. We'd like to be able to do more of what we do with this Span Drive product, which is gradually and gracefully move things up and down, and then break in case of glass and open the relays if needed, which you want because the alternative is tripping the main breaker. So
That's good.
The whole goal of that product, we have these amazing tailwinds with the Inflation Reduction Act and just general.
Oh,
I think
talk to us about that and how that could work with Span. the
yeah,
IRA.
absolutely. So we have these tailwinds for folks to get new appliances, but the same questions that can gum you up with back. Well, what does this look like, and what can I get? Can I get a 3.5 ton? Do I need to get a 2 ton? Just making that easier is our goal by doing that smart orchestration and management. So that's coming. Inflation Reduction Act. There's a good chunk of money on the table for this stuff, and folks should be excited about it and should take advantage of it. That's my 3-second pitch. It depends on what you're adding. But just to give a few examples, there's explicit carve-outs for wiring and panel upgrades.
Wow.
$600 up to $6,000 or more
Wow.
for some folks, depending on things like income. Similarly, let's say you're getting your heat pump system or upgrading HVAC or just other components of your electrical system. In most of those scenarios, you can qualify the panel upgrade and the wiring under that cost as well.
Wow.
I think we were talking earlier about I think here in Texas, someone on our team had looked at max possible that they could qualify for, and it was like $14,000 for if they wanted to kind of go all in and do the max amount of upgrades and see how much
pretty cool.
they could get back. And then the last thing, which is true today and has been true prior to the IRA, is solar and storage. The Span panel qualifies under that 30% tax credit for ITC for solar. And then
nice.
with the IRA, that now covers battery only as well. So previously where you could only qualify if you were adding new solar panels on the roof, now it's a bit more expansive, and both the Span panel is qualified as part of that system as well.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I mean, that's something that a builder or an electrical contractor can do a little of the legwork and educate customers to kind of help them along the way, but also as a business, not a venture, but as a business tactic to help get some more of these in the field.
Yeah,
I like
money's
it.
out there.
Let's end on this last question. For the 3 different types of people maybe watching this, somebody building a new home, somebody maybe remodeling or adding this as a remodel or part of a remodel project, or maybe somebody who's watching this and just thinks Span's cool and wants to upgrade their house. How do those 3 categories of people figure out how could this work? Who do I talk to? Is there an electrician in the kind of qualified Span electrician? Is there a network of that? Give us the kind of sales pitch on how people can get Span.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not a faceless entity, right? We want to be partners to our installers. As a product person, I want that feedback, So we're here to help. That's sort of the first thing I'll say. for electricians and installers across all categories, home builder, just general electrician, solar and storage. Go to our website. There's clear links to become a certified SPAN installer.
Awesome.
The content that you'll need there. It's a relatively, self-serve kind of simple, straightforward thing to do. And that's a great way to just learn more about, specs. Where does SPAN work? How do we do the things we do? For a homeowner, same story, go on the website. And I'd also encourage folks to go to the App Store, Google or Apple App Store, download the SPAN Home app, and you can actually run through a simulated home.
Oh, really?
So you can see,
that's cool.
home
I haven't done
with
that.
solar and batteries and what that might look like, a home with EV charging with SPAN Drive and what that might look like. So if your
Cool.
main goal is just, hey, I want to learn more, that's the best way to do it. Experience it for yourself. If you're I'm ready to do my first project, get in touch. Get in touch through our website. We'll help you out.
Span.io, correct?
Span.io.
I can speak firsthand to, we've taken the course. We are SPAN certified.
Okay.
And it's called the Tech Portal.
That's right.
And it's really cool. I mean, I almost wish more companies would do something similar, but you log in as an installer and you can click the Tech Portal and it comes up with this, just link after link or page after page of install videos.
That's cool.
And that big thick print that I
Yeah,
did because I didn't know if
yeah.
I'd have Wi-Fi. I printed out a couple of the install manuals with the drive, and I just was brushing up. But I just printed it right
Good
out,
data.
right on the website. It's there. But I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a huge kudos to we have a full-time training team, a tech services team who are just thinking about how we make folks' lives in the field easier. And these are folks that have worked in the field themselves. So, we want to get people excited. We want to remove those barriers. Sometimes a question on site or one missing tool, one thing you have to run to Home Depot for can mean the difference between a one-day job and a two-day job.
Yeah.
So that's great that you were going through the tech portal and had a good
This has been
experience there.
super interesting, Cole. I got to say, I need to look at SPAN from my house, to be honest. This feels like a bridge to the future for me.
Let's make it happen.
This is really, really cool. Any final thoughts before we close it out, Cole? Anything we missed that you forgot to mention, or that people need to know about SPAN that we didn't get to?
There is so much more to say, but
Yeah,
I
there's a
think
lot.
I'll take that prompt just to back way out. Why are we doing this, right? We're in it because we see the need to electrify, both for the kind of climate reasons, for the resiliency reasons, for cost reasons. Helping people understand how they use their energy is just such a missing piece, I think, in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And it can really impact you in ways that maybe you don't think about. Getting gas out of the home, there's been a lot of studies on how that's good for health, getting just a better understanding of how your bill breaks down.
Yeah.
So many great reasons to do it, and I think the thing that we're most excited about is working with folks like yourself who are also excited about this product, because we need these partnerships. We're not going to install 1 million panels ourselves, so
Yeah.
I guess it's just a thank you for having
For
us,
sure.
and thank you to the folks who have been supporters of SPAN. And
If I could piggyback on that, I would say that what's cool about what we're talking about here, and what I like about talking about efficiency and electrification as part of that, is that it kind of spans all party lines. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit on. For me, it kind of boils down to resilience, reliability, and durability. And honestly, when we were out of power in Austin for a week, it sucked for a lot of people, and a lot of things went wrong in those houses, between exterior tankless water heaters blowing up and having water issues, with people's water lines freezing, with families that were literally like, oh my gosh, my 2-year-old's really cold tonight. Where do I go? There's a certain amount of this that just really boils down to me as a dad feeling like I got to protect my family if something happens. And what if I was in California with you when the grid went down? Like, how do I make sure my family has this like all automatic and it's all good to go? And that resiliency really resonates for me as a dad, as a builder, as a homeowner. And we're not getting any more reliable in our grid. You and I were talking about a book you finished recently about grid reliability. There's some scary stuff out there. And so to kind of bridge the future with a SPAN panel, maybe with a battery install, maybe with a generator, with some solar, I'm a little bit of a mini prepper, and this really speaks to me. And I really like that story of reliability. And also the thing that put me over the edge was that in the brick scenario where this bricks out, it still works. I think that's the bottom line for me. I really like that about this. This isn't the iPhone that, oh crap, my battery stopped working and my 5-year-old iPhone needs replaced. This is much more like my Chevy truck that is really reliable, and 10 years from now will be a great truck for my kids to drive. Any final thoughts, brother?
I think the bottom line is when it comes to build, and what you've taught me by involving me in build, is building better homes.
Building better homes.
So I think that's like the broad view, and I think this is a big piece.
It's a bridge to the future.
Yeah.
It's available today, but it feels like it's taken us to 20 years from now.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's very, very cool. Thank you,
Yeah,
Cole.
thank
Really
you.
appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely.
Span.io, the website, they have great people there. I've talked to a bunch of them. This is a good crowd. And by the way, you should be following CJ, CNC Electric, CNC_electric.
Yep.
On Instagram.
Yep. And we're in Northern California, and I love, we like communicating with people. So I mean, that's what we're here to do. So I questions galore. Let's do it.
He's awesome. He's awesome. He's posting on a pretty regular / daily basis, the Instagram. He's also shooting videos on Build Show Network, thebuildshow.com. And lastly, if you're watching this recorded, you didn't get to see it live, sign up for our email. There'll be something below us here. You can sign up for our emails. We send an email on Tuesdays and Fridays from my team that says, here's what's new on Build Show Network. We have 13 contributors, CJ and I and 11 others, shooting videos on a weekly basis. Our motto is know better, build better. And that's what we were talking about today, having the knowledge to really understand the technology and the convenience and the reliability and what this span panel could do for you and your clients. Very, very nerdy and very interesting seminar. Really appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. It was
My pleasure.
informative.
With that being said, guys, follow us on TikTok or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.